This is an experimental T is for training. I'm Paul Signorelli. I'm sitting next to Kate Storsky. I always get her name semi-wrong, so I thought I'd let her get it wrong this time.
Easier that way.
She's going to be the host of this. Here's the setup. We're responding here from Chicago at McCormick Place to the ALA conference hashtag ALA Left Behind, which is our colleagues who would normally be here with us not being able to be here. So we decided, yes, indeed. And one of our big left behinds is Maurice Coleman, who's usually the host of T is for Training, a wonderful library podcast done every other Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Pacific Time. So today, for those of you that are out there, you'll be able to interact with us through the typed chat. We may have a couple people coming in as participants live, and you'll see them on screen if they make it. But the point of the conversation today is to get into the topic of what do we do to engage our colleagues who sometimes are left out of the on-site room when we have the technology to do this live. So Kate, you're on.
Oh boy. Maybe I shouldn't have pre-gamed this. Oxford University Press had beer and pizza, and they were streaming the pregame at the Super Bowl. I couldn't say no. So this is a perfect example. I actually used Google Hangouts with the knitting community. A couple of us who went to Yarn Camp in Tennessee last summer got together and decided to have like a virtual knit night. We have about 10 people come in on a hangout. We don't record it like we're recording it right now, but we sit around, we chat, we knit, we drink. And it's a great way just to us to be connected when we're all over the place.
I use Google Hangouts quite a bit with colleagues when I'm on site and I've got a presenter that I want to bring in for training, teaching, or learning opportunity. And generally what we'll do is a lot of rehearsal. Generally this looks a lot better than it may look today. We actually threw this event together without a lot of rehearsal to make a point here. The rehearsals make it look pretty, but sometimes you don't have the chance to make it pretty. So today it's just kind of winging it and taking the good, the bad, and the ugly of any bandwidth problems we hit or any other connection problems we have. But it's to show any of you that aren't yet familiar with Google Hangouts as a teaching, learning, training tool, or as a way to connect with other people from conferences and make them part of it, how it's involved. Now, in our low-tech version, we're going to actually move the laptop that has the webcam in and introduce you to our third T is for Training person who's with us right now, and that would be Jules.
Hello, I'm Jules Shore, and we use Microsoft's Link product at the office frequently to do the video conferences and meetings. While we don't always necessarily use it for the video of the person we're talking to, we can handle just the audio alone, but we use it for the fact that you can share the screen with the people who are connected to your Link connection.
So it looks at this moment, if we're reading our screen properly, that we have all of one viewer out there, and whoever's out there, we'll do it Maurice style and say, Viewer 1, please introduce yourself for the chat. Tell us who you are, where you are. And then if you have questions about what's going on at the conference or how this works, we'll get right into the meat of it. I'm going to move this back over to Kate. So she, again, is back in our official capacity of moderating while Maurice looks at you in his flat Maurice format.
With his, and let's move this up so you can see the fabulousness that is Maurice.
We're going to give Maurice a big virtual hug here.
Everybody hug. Aww. So we actually use at my job GoToMeeting. We have a pretty good suite with GoToMeeting. We have GoToWebinar, and we don't use the video conferencing on purpose. And I say this because there are times that people accidentally click the camera button on the GoToMeeting, and then you see somebody working from home in their bathroom with their hair looking a mess. But we're able to share screens and record webinars. We just did a whole bunch of training for a new sales software that we just received, and all the training sessions were recorded with GoToMeeting and posted up on the wiki that we had built for this migration to this new software so that people could rewatch them when they needed to.
One of the lovely things I've noticed as we do more and more to bring in our missing colleagues, or when we ourselves are missing in action because we couldn't be there, is to interact on Twitter. Colleagues of mine and I have worked together in the American Society for Training and Development, which now is ATD, the Association for Talent Development. We've worked when we're off-sites to plan how to get into meetings via Twitter or other things. And if we do it effectively by responding to what's being tweeted out about the conference and interacting rather than just retweeting, there have been times when people will say, are you here? And it does raise that important question. What does it mean to be here in the room? The answer to a situation like that is, I believe, when we start to interact at that level, responding to content on site, being part of the conversation, that yes, indeed, we are there. And as another colleague of mine, and I asked at one of these blended events where she was off-site and I was on. We asked the participants in that physical room, how big is the room today? And they were guessing 20 feet by 40 feet. And I made the point, we were in Washington, D.C. She was in Chicago. Didn't that make the room about 650 or 700 miles wide? We are looking at a time which is fabulous for us and opportunities to expand the room and get ourselves beyond walls. And again, we're hoping that using the chat today, if you do use the chat function on your machines to type in questions, we can bring you into this room and see how many miles we cover. Mm-hmm. Jules, you want to add anything on that?
I'm just wondering, I see on the screen we have 5 viewers, and I'm not seeing anything going into the chat window to let us know who's out there. We're kind of talking to a laptop here in a very large room, wondering who is there.
If you are having trouble finding the chat window, you may need to look on the left side of your screen. If you put a cursor up there, it'll pop a little thing that has a chat window access in the upper left-hand corner. If you're not seeing the chat yet, try clicking on that icon and seeing if that'll bring it up for you so that you can type in questions to us and we can respond even better to you. That's what we're hoping to accomplish today.
Yeah, one of the things I think about with Twitter is that in the space of maybe, let's say, about 5 years, we've come from it being seen sometimes as rude. And I actually had an experience with this at an ALA where I was tweeting the president's program at the close, I think it was president's program or closing session. Yeah, it was a closing session. And the person next to me gave me the look to say, like, that's rude. You should be listening to the ALA president. And I'm thinking, I'm broadening the reach of what the president is saying. Now it seems it's more accepted. I've noticed now conferences allow you to make your own conference hashtag. So your session can have its own hashtag, and that will be listed in the conference program.
I think we've even gone even a little further than that. I was at the top tech trends discussion this morning, and besides having their own hashtag, there was actual responses to what people were tweeting from those of us who were there in the room, both on Twitter and to answer the question for the room itself. So we've really gone to the point where we're expecting people who are at some distance to still be involved with us. If they'd like to be involved, we'll do everything we can to keep them involved.
The fact that we have this technology and can use it so freely in every literal sense of that word and figurative sense of that word means that the possibilities, as Jules was pointing out, are magnificent. We never really know who is out there when we send a tweet or when we do a hangout like this. And it's always a wonderfully pleasant surprise to find there are various different networks that overlap but aren't necessarily right on target with who we thought were there, are there. So again, we're hoping some of you out there today, or at least a few of the people who were feeling left behind and are tuning in to see what's going on at the conference, but also for any of you who are not ALA or American Library Association members, but are fascinated by the experiment we're doing, we hope that what's happening here gives you some ideas on how to stretch this in your own organization. Yep. Again, Americans, the Association for Training Development did a very savvy thing in mid-2014. There was a huge announcement being made to members, and of course not all members were at the annual conference, so they arranged for live streaming of the announcement. And some of us who were off-site were able to participate by watching it, by tweeting it out, and seeing our own comments from afar retweeted as part of the audience. So it's something we all want to think about in conference attendance, as well as in training, teaching, learning. Mm-hmm. What can we do to bring in a broader audience that broadens the conversations? Kate, let me toss this back to you and ask you, as you've gone to the conference for over the last couple of days, what have you seen in terms of interactions with people off-site and ALA's attempts to bring more people into it?
Lots of use of the ALA Left Behind hashtag.
Okay, it looks like we've got somebody coming in, so we're going to see if we can get this person in.
Okay.
I see who it is. I know who it is, but we're not getting the button that would allow him to come in. I think he's trying to come in by a different one. All right, I'm going to accept it on my tablet. We're going to just wing this real big time.
Technology is great when it works.
And indeed, can you hear okay? Let me pump up the volume on this thing.
I can hear you a little choppy.
All right. I'm going to see what I can do to get you in front of the...
Very choppy and choppy.
All right. Choppy may be the order of the day.
I see I'm projected on...
All right, for those...
I am projected on the big board. Oh, that's scary.
All right.
I know, so am I.
Ladies and gentlemen, the first kind of
I can't hear.
All right, we can hear you, and I'm not sure how much the audience offsite's going to hear because this is coming out of a tablet being photographed by a laptop going out on a Google Hangout via your secondary Google Hangout because you couldn't get in. Ladies and gentlemen at home, this is how weird and wonderful this gets. For those of you that don't know him, you are now looking at Maurice Coleman, the normal host of T is for Training. Maurice, go ahead. That's the first time I've ever seen Maurice frozen and not capable of saying something.
I know. Should we go
All right.
back to flat Maurice? It's definitely more fun to photograph of him.
This is Maurice Stereo. What we were hoping to do, and again, this is part of what doing something like this on the fly means to everybody. There is a way in Google Hangouts where you get, okay, Maurice is back. Yes? I'm trying to move the laptop, the tablet.
Now I can see video. You, that's Kate next to you, and your tablet.
Yes.
And it's projecting on the.
It is projecting onto the screen.
Okay. Hi to all the people I can't see who are around you.
I removed it.
Those playing Cards Against Humanity somewhere in that corner.
There is your special guest star, Jules.
I can barely. Your video's playing with your mom. Hey, Jules, how are you?
I'm doing great, Maurice.
I've known you watching it.
Midwestern T is for Training.
Yes, I'm hoping. I'm going to repeat that because again, I don't have an idea of how much.
I will tell you what.
I don't know how much people can hear at home, but Maurice was just welcoming Jules. Jules was welcoming Maurice. Again, not optimal here, but it's an attempt for us to make up for the fact that we can't get Maurice in the same hangout with us as an invited participant. So, Maurice, now speaking right into the speaker, can you hear me any better now?
This is like a really bad Verizon commercial.
Now it looks like I've had too much to drink at a vendor party. That's better. Okay.
You missed me talking about how I started pregame this by having beer at the Oxford booth.
Well, I know you guys are dealing with the blizzard, so remember, lots of brandy.
That's a good tip. That's a really good tip. What I'm going to do to keep us focused on our live audience who's trying to make heads or tails out of this is Maurice, I'm going to turn this toward us so that we can physically see you.
Okay.
We will put the flat Maurice picture up here so people can see you that way.
Did you know about flat Maurice? Maurice?
Jill's trying to come in.
Oh, okay. Jill is there.
I see Paul's shoulder and I see Kate's shoulder.
All right, so I see Jill. I'm going to hand this to you.
Okay.
Thank you from the meeting yesterday, Paul.
Yep.
Fantastic.
I saw the picture of you carrying around of me.
I didn't do that, Maurice. Somebody else did that. I have no idea what that was, Maurice. Maurice, I'm going to switch over to see if Jill can hear us and if we can hear her. Jill, go ahead and say something if you've got sound. All right, the sound isn't coming in yet. Can you up the sound a little bit? Jill's on, but we're not hearing her. And Jill, also check to see if you have unmuted your microphone in the upper part of your Google Plus screen. Okay, let's try that again. We're still not hearing you, but we are seeing your lips move. This is progress.
Slow progress, but progress. I'm hearing what sounds like traffic on 495.
Yeah, so we're hearing Maurice, and we know from ahead of time that the speaker system was working, but for some reason Google isn't making the connection for us to the speaker itself. I want to make sure that we're on. No, we are not muted. So Jill, we could actually do a T is for Training kind of thing. Jill, if you want to type comments into the chat, I will read those, as Maurice oftentimes reads them when we're doing audio versions of this, and we will take this conversation about 6 different ways.
Okay.
We got your sound. Go ahead.
Hi. So this is Jill sitting in Syracuse, New York, where it is not snowing. And I apologize for being late, but I didn't realize I should use Google Chrome and so I kept trying to get in Firefox.
Okay. Well, welcome.
Welcome.
It's been so long since we've seen you. I know you were here earlier this week for a conference and we had dinner together, but you're back in Syracuse now, right?
Yes. Yes.
You may have been smart getting out.
All right, so the point of this, and we're about halfway into it now, for those of you watching it and shaking your head saying, what the heck was all that? This is sometimes what happens when you're trying to do something without a lot of rehearsal, but it does show you that if you're willing to go with it and improvise, that these connections with people off-site can become visceral. Now, what's happening in the room is we can see Jill up on the screen every time she talks, and it is a fairly big screen. For those of you watching this, you're seeing Maurice there on his tablet, and we're using the tablet so that he can kind of get a sense of what's happening in the room. We sort of have 3 different connections going to try to make this connection so that people aren't left behind.
Mm-hmm.
Jill, how's the quality of sound from your place?
The quality is excellent.
Fantastic. And it's like you are in the room. Every time you talk, you are full-size Jill.
I think that's our title, full-size Jill.
So now that I finally made it in the room, can you guys tell me what lessons you've learned from ALA?
One lesson I've learned is do more rehearsals on something like this before. No, seriously, what I'm learning is that the connections being made face-to-face as well as online and via Twitter are highly significant. There are fun conversations going on. The conversations are substantial and could lead to other things well beyond the conference. So in a nutshell, what I'm learning is being here and being online at the same time is a really productive thing.
Oh, yeah.
And for me, it's just like getting out of your little comfort zone. And
There's Maurice now.
we got Maurice on the.
That's even better.
So it's like I hang out with the youth services librarians. I mean, I work for a library vendor that is 90% academic market.
Right.
But I hang out with the youth services librarians, and I have a lot of fun with them because I learn to think creatively with them. So those connections are a big help for me as I go forth in my job because I build that thinking on the fly creativity skill.
Okay, I'm going to move it over to Jules.
Hi, Jules.
Hi, Jill. I also noticed that Maurice has joined us in the actual Hangout rather than the tablet. Maurice, can we get you to say hello?
Hi, everyone.
All right.
We have just accomplished 15 minutes into a 30-minute session what we set out to do today. See if I can move this back. Jules, scrunch in just a little bit more. We have created, as far as I know, the first ever attempt to not only do a TS for training via Google Plus Hangout, not only to draw in a little bit of the left behind crowd at ALA, but to successfully show that if you're patient and if you're a bit innovative, and if Maurice's truck is overturning a highway spot,
Please do not Google Hangout and drive. PSA.
you can see that this
My wife was nice enough to come pick me up at work today.
Aww.
So Maurice, you're so used to doing this on audio rather than face-to-face or ever through a Google Hangout. Is this a bit of a game changer for you in terms of what you see TS for Training being able to do to reach out for people, or in a larger sense, connecting people who are off-site from conferences into on-site conferences?
Well, not necessarily say a game changer, but a game extender. And this is truly teaser training started. Thank you for putting my picture up.
Go ahead.
Teaser training started as recreating the conference.
I think he was trying to say recreating the conference experience.
Yes, and he
Yes.
will.
And I think he froze.
Yes. This, again, for those of you that have not done Google Hangouts, especially with wireless rather than a good landline connection, which is what you should be doing, but we don't have that here, this is a common thing that can happen. So rather than getting bollocked by it, you get used to the idea that people will, as Maurice just did, drop off. Let's see if we can position his picture where he used to be, and he will probably click back in. It's something we all get used to doing when we're coming in via wireless stuff on Hangouts. It is part of the gig, but it doesn't have to be a game changer or a game breaker.
Just got to roll.
So going back to my question, Paul, you answered that the conference, the lesson learned is about the connection of being online and on site at the same time. Kate talked about hanging out with a totally different crew than normal at the conference and kind of learning from their creativity. Jules, you may have already said this when I was trying to get in earlier, but kind of what have you picked up from the conference?
What I talked about in terms of the conference and connectivity we were talking about Twitter and the putting out the Twitter hashtag, and not just as a matter of having communications going on offline and out of the room, but to have the people on the panel answer questions brought in from people who are reading other people's comments from the room and tying in a much larger group into the communications.
Another thing that I've noticed in going from different meeting to meeting here and seeing colleagues face to face and tweeting out a little bit is that there are some common themes that should have been obvious so that really weren't to me. For example, I was in with a training group yesterday morning. We were talking about ways to engage people more in a particular group, which is the ALA Learning Roundtable. Maurice plugs them constantly because Roundtable is a sponsor of T is for Training.
Right.
One of the issues that came up was the idea that when somebody new comes in, even though the group is small and welcoming and warm, there's still that transition period where a little bit of personal attention solidifies the relationship. So the suggestion was made, what if existing members became at least informal temporary mentors to the new members to mentor their way into full action and full involvement with that group? Great topic, great idea. I think they're probably going to act on it. Went to a meeting later in the afternoon at a strategic planning session for ALA, and the same thing was coming up in a different context. People talking about how big a membership organization like this one with 55,000 or more members, how daunting that can be for somebody new. And wouldn't it be lovely if we had some sort of informal mentoring thing that each division and each roundtable and the organization itself had that relationship to solidify what starts when you pay those dollars, but then you have that interim period of I don't know anybody.
Especially because sometimes the ALA itself, even some of the divisions, are like these ginormous hydra. And so many tentacles, and you don't know which tentacle to cut off first.
So I was at the NELA conference a couple of years ago, which is the New England Library Association annual conference, and many conferences have a first-timer event, a reception or something, but at NELA, theirs was the very first session of the conference. And so the very first session was an event for first-timers that kind of got you acclimated to the conference. And I found that very helpful as a person who had never been to NELA before, to be able to know that as soon as I got there, there was something for me that would help to get me acclimated. It didn't provide the mentoring that you guys are talking about, but I've had that, for example, at the Elise conference, my first conference at Elise. I found a Twitter buddy who would answer questions for me when I was in a session. I'd be like, I don't know what this acronym is. Can you tell me what this acronym is? And he's remained a really wonderful and useful contact to me since then. And I have no idea where Maurice is walking.
I think
I'm walking around the other side of my couch. I was standing in my doorway, and I'm walking around to my couch so I can sit.
Okay.
We just redefined mobile participation to not only include a laptop and a tablet, but a presenter who is mobile during the whole presentation, from his library in Hartford to his truck, through the highways where we saw him do some magic rolls, and now he's walking to his home. That is changing the face of M-Learning. Thank you, Mr. Coleman.
You're welcome, but you may have missed it. Vicki gave me a ride today so that I wouldn't be, shall we say, laughing while driving.
Oh, no, we don't laugh here.
No,
We're trying to make sure I connect while driving my truck, so Vicki was nice enough to give me a ride to work today.
I can imagine that the police also appreciate that. I'm not sure they've written a ticket for Google Hangout while driving.
Yeah. Well, look, Paul and I tested this out yesterday. I was sticking it in my cup holder. You could see my face. I could talk. I was fine. As long as the Hangout worked, I'd have been fine.
I am going to out you. Yes, we were testing that, and yes, he was holding his device up and down trying to do things, and for about half of the test, all I could see was the top of his head, which is much more attractive than the top of my head. You're going to really live up to the whole Bald Geek in Maryland ending that you've done through this particular conversation. Glad to see more of you, Maurice.
yes.
Thank you. I'm glad to see you all there.
Thank you.
Yep.
So continuing on this theme of Jill is actually kind of inspiring is asking things that we picked up here. It also makes me think that the kind of conversations we're having don't need to start and end here, and I think that's something that the American Library Association is very good at. In fact, let's do credit where credit is due. We have a wonderful colleague on staff here, Mary McKay, who about a week ahead of time, before the conference was underway, put out notes on LinkedIn and I believe other social media saying, if you're going to feel left behind, don't be. We have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have a lot of other things that the association does. American Libraries Magazine actually sent out an email about, I think, 10 days before the conference with the same information. This is an association that cares about its members, and the result is members show up here and are engaged and shaping the face of the association. I think that's really a great training, teaching, learning, and collaboration example that we don't acknowledge often enough.
It's nice to see it being an sort of semi-official thing as opposed to the informal that has happened over the years. You know, sure, Jane Levine and a few people from with the red badges are we're doing that informally, but it seems that it's more of an overall organizational move this year to make those that aren't there.
Yes. Yeah. And again, you mentioned Jenny. She was great. When we were sitting at a table, Jules was here. I think Kate was across the room the other day, and we were talking with the Left Behind group, and Jenny was with us. We were talking about Mary's comments. We all, about the same time, hit the idea of what if we use the space we're in, the networking on commons, which is where people on site come together to have great informal conversations. What if we extended the networking on commons out online? And so Jenny quickly found the last 30-minute space that wasn't taken, which is the 30-minute space we're filling right now, and that's why we're here. That's how responsive the association is.
That's a good thing.
Yes, it shows what a great association management group can do to really support us as professionals.
Yep.
I know the Elise conference this year had a member who was running the Elise Twitter whatever, and Twitter handle, and I think it worked really well. But then that person also used Storify at the end of the day to do really awesome roundups, not just like these cute short roundups that you sometimes see in Storify, but really like full day roundups. And what a wonderful gift to give those people who were there, who weren't in every session, but also the people who are left behind. And I hope that someone at ALA is doing something, whether it's Storify or blog post or something that really gives people a good roundup of the action on the ground.
Well, Jill, in response to that, here would be my challenge to ALA, meaning ALA and its members, meaning each of us as individuals. We all have access to Twitter. There are Twitter hashtags for the conference. There are Twitter hashtags for some of the sessions. If each of us as individuals sees a session that we liked and takes a few minutes it takes to create a Storify, and within that add in the context, not just tweets, but a few comments setting context, we will create the kind of learning objects that continue the conversations, just as we hope that today's program, once it's archived live on YouTube, becomes a learning object for others saying, what if I wanted to go in live from a distance? What would I do? Well, I'd rehearse more than those clowns did, but I would also see that the rehearsal is just the temporary thing that gets you to the real conversation. The technology quickly disappears when we all feel as if we are in the same room, because we are.
Right.
So Maurice, we're almost to the bottom of this half hour and the time that we have allotted here. Let us defer to you as the official host and master of our T is for Training group. Please close us out, Maurice.
Well, thank you all for listening on YouTube or Google Hangout or however you're listening. Thanks to the folks joining us today, Jill, Jules, Paul, Kate, and probably a couple of people who are lurking in the background that I can't see, and some folks who are sort of probably sitting a couple of tables away who can hear but can't see us, and I can't see them. I would like to thank the snow for falling, though I would like some to fall here for us in Maryland. My wife, who loves snow and has been severely deprived, we would like to take a little bit of your snow from you.
We'll give it to you. And a lot
yes, because you're in blizzard conditions of what I'm hearing here.
Yep, it's bad.
So everyone is going to hunker down in the convention center. Luckily, McCormick is big enough to roll out some cots in case you all get stuck in the convention center.
thank you for continuing the tradition of having a TS for training at ALA midwinter and during the summer annual conference by doing this today. And let us hold up a sign that we got in our package as our closeout message.
Sorry, internet. Oh my goodness, that is awesome.
Yes.
Sorry, internet closed. That's great. Well, thank you, whoever's joining us, and I can see, etc. Thank you to Paul, who is the Minister of Crazy Ideas.
Guilty as charged.
And by the way, I hope that someone will post a photo of that sign.
Yes.
Actually, I prefer this sign, but you know, if you insist, okay. All right, Maurice, having declared this convocation closed, we will close it out and see everybody again real soon. Thank you.
Yep. Say hi to everyone there. Go play some Cards Against Humanity, Cards Against Librarianship. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So long.